So, Maestro, I actually wanted to ask you a question. A great many of us place you among the very small number of great conductors of this century, and it so happens that when we want to listen to your recordings, for example, we're reduced to bootlegs or recordings that were made. You've refused recordings most of the time.
Yes, madam, yes, of course. And why is that exactly? Listen to me now. Besides, we really must understand each other. We simply must agree on precisely what music is. You see, there are aspects that still remain entirely and completely unknown to us. To start right at the very end, what is it that we are actually defining when we talk about tempo?
So for me,
many people mistakenly assume it is a physical reality that could provide criteria for putting certain sound vectors together. In reality, nothing could be further from the truth. In truth, there is no real reality existing behind the concept of tempo. Tempo is a condition, a framework, so that the vast multitude of information that sound gives us can be reduced to a single unity. This is because our mind can only work on one thing at a time. It jumps from one monad to another, and so we must reduce the multitude. Take this orchestral arrangement. The flute is flat. Oh, so there's a duality. Him and the others. What do? Higher, please. So he enters into the order. That means he enters into the unity of the others. And now the sense of duality has completely disappeared. And why exactly is that the case? Because I simply cannot transcend this reality if it remains trapped within a dual nature, provided it doesn't arrive in a way that is too fast, too high, too sharp, or too shrill. I try to make a unity to be able to reduce them, to be able to make it my own, and then jump to the next one, because that's the work of the mind. We jump from one monad to another. We transcend the initial stage. We liberate ourselves from that first one. We make it entirely our own, so we are free to perceive the next one. So tell me, do you really possess the exact same multitude of information when you are standing in front of a microphone as you do when you are listening with your own ear? On the contrary, the microphone actually cancels out a third of that information, while simultaneously creating 2/3 of entirely new elements all on its own. So if I have an enormous mass of elements, I have a lot of time. I needed much more time to reduce them than if the sum of facts is limited. So the more complexity there is, the slower the time had to be. That's well known. A third. And that is quite simply the most basic psychology. When you read a complicated author like James Joyce, you find that you have a much greater necessity. It is essential for you to have much more time to reduce and to properly identify the end with the beginning. This duality disappears. He started like that because he wanted to get there, and that there already existed when he had started. So there is a reduction. The more multitude of facts there is, the more time I need. So when they tell me Celibidache's tempos are slow, they only prove that they're deaf to music. They listen to physical matter. That means the direct frequencies. And I listen to the fourth octaves, which are called astral sound. And in Ravel Debussy, where that's possible, I reduce the high and the low, but not for everyone, because they don't have the ear. And the critic, he says, it's too slow. And that means he reduces a physical time without having perceived either all that I've perceived or the possibility of being able to reduce, because yes, it's a question of musicality too. And it's not the critic who can do There is a type of conductor who hears absolutely nothing but the direct sound. This means that intonation is reduced to the physical world, and everything that is born from the confrontation of this physical matter, which exists 4 octaves higher, is completely and utterly unknown to him. But if for me, Ravel's bowing, the 2 instruments he chose with the harmonic in the horn and the double bass in this way, then there's a whole world that's born, which for him doesn't exist because he's deaf to that. So I must reduce that one according to this physical world. You know, so I need much more time. A bow that's drawn mechanically, room is 0. A bow drawn according to all the inclinations and inversions that exist in the measure itself, this bow, it's much richer in what? Clarity in information of a sonic nature, but not in the physical world. But if we limit even all this observation to the physical world, there's you who listen differently otherwise than me. Why is that? Because your attention
Yes,
has
that's right.
never been drawn to it. Listen, leave that. Listen up there. Do you hear the octave over there? Where? Where? I really must draw your full attention to this. Something that no one has ever done before. When there's faulty instrumentation, what does that come from? That means the limited experience of the composer who only concentrated on what we hear directly. Zanatis Sataziyosasana Osaizazat refers to the physical world of the musical measure, the direct sonic relationships between the notes. But honestly, that is really nothing at all if you observe how Ravel carefully selects his harmonics based on sounds that are not born directly from the source. Otherwise, they would be considered entirely collateral. But if that does not interest you, you certainly do not have the necessity of maintaining a very slow tempo in order to materialize all these effects. So there is quite a significant difference to be found there. Which French critic has ever truly heard anything other than the simple direct sound? I dare say such a person has not even been born yet. However, that does not mean that those who write criticism could not be brought to this new perspective. But tell me, by whom exactly? It isn't Mr. Tippis who teaches conducting at the conservatory. It is an absolute disgrace. But then why would anyone do such a thing? To destroy the youth, to make all their reactions bitter simply because there is nothing else left.
Papillo, but I listened to your tempo in the finale of this fourth with that massive crescendo building up measure after measure.
Yes, what's it rely on? How does it stand
It's
now?
kind of innocence.
Why is it considered so perfect? Because it means you have heard, listened, realized, and transcended what? The full range of the 9 octaves. If you focus your attention solely on the physical body and nothing more than that, you do not require much time. But if you wish to perceive the entire complex apparatus that shifts, relaxes, and expands, that specific word does not even exist in the French language. It blossoms upward until it reaches those certain powerful fortissimo notes. It means you were where I was. That's where this identification comes from. You tell me it was perfect. Madam, for me it was perfect too. But it's not your merit, nor is it mine. But both of us were listening to all the richness, which the poor critic can't do. Because first of all, his memory is a fact that puts brakes on him everywhere. In the creative act, there is no memory, there is no science, there is no knowledge. Because those are facts that are always attached to the past. The creative act refuses to accept any conditions that exist outside of its own essence. That is precisely the reason why it remains entirely free. Furthermore, you have never heard the music of Bruckner in France, as he is still very little known there. And the fact that you are nevertheless, nevertheless completely detached from all of your past makes you a creator. If it is true you found it perfect, it is because of that profound liberation.
What I mean is,
you can't say, I know what a measure is, I'm not interested. I know what a body is, and it's marked fortissimo. But tell me, how do you structure a fortissimo if your musical ear isn't present from the start, where all possibilities for blossoming begin? If you aren't fully there in the moment, if you hear, oh, I have a Bruno Walter record at home, and it is played at a much faster tempo, do you see? And for the record, this incredible richness of all these impressions that you followed today, it simply cannot be there, because the microphone is just unable to capture all of that detail.
even with all these new digital tools though,
On the contrary, the new critics, they move even further away. We divide the sound into 1,600,000 parts and recombine it. But according to what criteria? According to the criteria of the machine. How can we say what was? It's not a physical moment. No. It's entirely spiritual in nature. And where does it remain? If it has memory, it's attached to the passive, to the past. That means it's not creative. The creative moment is free. Free from all your signs, from all your instincts. Everything is transcended on the other side.
I don't want to sound pedantic, but I think it was Nietzsche who said that innocence was the essential condition for creation, for freedom in art.
Nietzsche was right on that point, but I find him to be fundamentally mistaken.
It's beautiful though, the notion of innocence.
Yes, but it's not innocence, madam. It's a total openness towards something that cannot come from outside. So inexplicable. There are many things like that. You see, they claim to know what music is, but when to teach it to be able to move to music, to measure 5, you must make it your own. Know everything that's in it. Make a unity of it, because your mind can leave one unity to receive another. There's no multitasking. From this, I jump with terrifying speed, but we jump from one transcended moment to the next. So you have to make that your own. Just, well, when I've made it mine, I have to be there. No. Otherwise, I simply cannot make it truly my own. I must be present there to fully perceive it in all of its intricate complexity. But when we look at measure 4, it is not just measure 4 that exists. What else is actually there? The third measure is nowhere to be found. It has vanished. Isn't it the organic and logical consequence of measure 3, just as 3 is of 2? So, in 4, there's the third, the second, the first. Not potentially, actually. It's a product that didn't fall from the sky. It's a product made by you in combination with the sound in a very complicated way. But 4 isn't isolated. It contains the measure 3, 2, and 1. What else does it contain? Everything that will be born from it. It is potentially the mother of all that is to come. Thus, measure 4 is irrelevant in the grand scheme. To truly make it mine, I must be present there. But if I am at the start and end at once, I'm not there. So, I'm not there precisely because I'm there. And that is exactly where all logic fails. Okay, and that's where your Cartesianism is finished by its own means. Yeah, so you see, but that seems like a very abstract argument. It's a real argument. Shouldn't you? Your mind detaches from measure 4. If it stays stuck to 4, there's no room for the 5th. So you make it your own to empty yourself, and you empty yourself to be able to perceive measure 5 in the same creative way. If that's a good... And then you jump from 5. But 4 isn't something. It's neither the end nor the beginning. It's the product of the other 3 and the product itself. So the present is a continual genesis in music. The now is attached to the beginning and the end continually, but it's at the same time free from any element that could constrain it to do anything other than its musical function.
I am listening to you, my dear maestro, with the greatest of interest, finding that I understand far more through my intuition than through that cold Cartesian spirit which you so rightly criticize. And yet I cannot help but feel that this implies a deeper dimension, one that exists far beyond the merely human.
No, I can't believe that we, as humans, can think and perceive a dimension that isn't human. Just because it's not physical and three-dimensional doesn't mean it's not human.
For example, Bruckner was a man who had faith, who had Christian faith, and which he leaned on very, very heavily. God knows he had a difficult life, and God knows that faith helped him. And one might think that you have something that...
Yes, I will tell you. I do not believe that Bruckner wrote such eternal music simply because there were specific conditions that we, with our Cartesian minds, are able to identify. It will always remain a mystery why he wrote what he wrote, because really he received neither encouragement nor confirmation from those around him. On the contrary, and you see, it didn't stop him when he was asked, where is the 5th? In the papers over there somewhere. He didn't even know. He was writing the 7th. But why is it called the 7th? Where are the others? There, over there. So you see, he was free of everything. Absolutely everything.
Are you completely free from everything now?
I think so. As far as music is concerned, I think so, yes. Otherwise,
When it comes to your own inner life, do you happen to hold any kind of belief or faith in something?
I'm a firm believer. I believe in the central cosmic vibration of all existence. I believe that we are currently in. Maintaining a perpetual constant contact with it. You could even call it God. If my mother were to ask me, are you a true believer? I'll tell her, yes, of course, because for her, that's what God is. I'm a strong believer then. If you tell me you believe there's still a woo way to explain things that depend on man, that aren't related to a force that transcends man, I tell you no, they were all wrong, starting with Marx.
But when you talk about sound, the vibrations of sound, and if something should be a link between the material and the spiritual, it could well be these vibrations.
Yes, I will go even further. I declare all is vibration. But if everything is vibration, here is the need to have a central reference system. How could we know if it's more, if it's less, if it touches me, it doesn't touch me, if I'm in this vibration, if there's no central reference, there are these sounds. Everything that touches us, for us, is always identifiable and always justifiable. On the basis of a certain experience and indeed a certain belief. Everything that touches us is like that. When you say, oh, I like that. No, I hate it. There's always a reference system that pushes you to say that. So perfect indifference isn't human because we are always, we've been ruminating from here towards somewhere. There are people who truly have no idea where they are actually heading. That is also a type of reference system, perhaps not as reliable as the English might claim, but it is always in existence. Anyone who is wrong is simply operating based on a fundamentally false reference system. So music is really, in this sense, it's the shortest path towards the revelation of the value of man and the existence of this central vibration.
Is it, Maestro, perhaps because you have reached the very deepest and most profound level of music? Well, let us just say within the vast realm of music then.
Yes, even that I cannot say, because you are just like me. You have never had the chance to have someone prevent you from staying in that phase where sound still has the power to awaken emotions within you. That is simply not what music is really about. All art has one single ultimate goal, the attainment of absolute freedom. So, what is music? Is it, oh, it's beautiful, oh, how it touched me, oh, Celibidache, how dramatic he is. I like that, but it's not that at all. Those are means. That's the bait. It is not just a sound where I discover reactions within you, which this fifth has either implanted deep inside or brought out to the surface. Sound possesses an uninterpretable relationship with the complex emotional world of man, and that quite precisely is the subject of phenomenology. It proves it to you. So, but it's not that. It's not through that. It's through that you do, that you listen to music, and even that you perhaps make music. But the final goal is to reach freedom. When you listen, you follow with this ear that you've demonstrated. You felt that it couldn't be any other way. You think, what an interpretation. There is none. Everything reducible was offered, but where did you reduce it? To what? I reduced measure 5 against the third, fifth, and first articulation. It's short. What is the final reduction? The whole into a one that is everything, the whole piece. If you've made this reduction, you've freed yourself from all the vectors that found an inner resonance in you that are going to make something live. And you live that under Bruckner's directions, because you have to go that way through this theme, through that, the contrast, the oppositions, and finally, boom, here I am freed. And at the end you said, oh, how beautiful it was. Then you haven't yet discovered what there was to discover. It wasn't beautiful, it was true. And beauty is nothing other than an intermediate station towards truth, therefore towards the perception of this sensation of central cosmic vibration.
Well, I find you perfectly consistent with yourself, because when we hear you talk about truth, we understand well that you hate lies and those who practice them, and that it prevents you from working.
Yes, of course. I see what you mean. Look, there are so many people who truly despise lies, but they cannot create music. What allows me to keep doing it is that I have no intention. I free myself every single time from everything that I have ever known to. So son, all this phenomenology I practice, it's all about saying no, not like that, not like that, flute too low, double bass too fast, no. But as for the real yes, I can't talk about that. You're the one who in the end says, yes, I'm free now. So Nessa, I've gone through all this conflict that you triggered in me through sound, but that's not the goal of music. And the goal of art isn't beauty. That's a false Western concept. It's the final truth. Tiki, what does he do? If he kept to his vision for this head, he couldn't make another one. He detached himself. He'd freed himself from that contrast that guided his hand and mind to shape this. But in the end, he went vroom. And now he's interested in another head, maybe, or a foot. Everything is now in perfect total order. Everything is a state of liberation. So the idea of, oh, how beautiful, he touched me. Those are personal reactions. My approach to music isn't personal at all. Even if I find myself on extremely sensitive ground when considering all of these various suggestions, we begin our journey with this truly breathtaking view, this vast and endless eternity that existed right at the very beginning. When I hear the sound of the horn, I think, oh, how truly beautiful, how, oh my. These are sensations born from an interval I have just digested. And then something else comes along and contradicts it immediately. It begins with that tim pam 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 motif. It is huge. It is like a true gentleman. And then, then there's something contradicts it. So versions, so there are conflicts. If the conflict is very serious and spans 3 dimensions, as is the case here, it's a triangulation, not an opposition like the sonata, like sonata form. It's a triangulation. So there are things that will contradict this first feeling he birthed in me. In what way? In this way. Then another that will contradict the result of those two. And suddenly I find myself engaged. Why do I listen? Why do I follow the development of the piece? Why? Because I'm engaged. Otherwise, I have had quite enough of this. I am leaving right now. No, absolutely not. You are not going anywhere. Why? You want to go where it's going, where you're pushed. You're pushed to the left and you're being torn apart continuously. And what do? You endure all this. Deep inside of you, a new feeling will eventually be born. I've had enough. I want to have where you are, why you follow, and why at the end, when you've been torn from all sides, you still find this extraordinary unity, because the conflict has exhausted itself. It exhausted itself based on what? We can't stay on one feeling because it's immediately contradicted by another tendency. And there's the conflict, and how long can it survive? I feel so limited. But by what? The sheer force of the opposition. It lacks real force. The piece is far too long. It is too forceful. It refuses to end. Just there. Can I interpret it? Is there only one way to map this? I will ignore. Just like the rest. But knowing it, I am not free. I'll be free when the last chord finally fades away. It's such. That's what you did yourself without knowing it. When you said, Maestro, it was perfect, because Madam, I too, when I lived it just now, I had the feeling it couldn't be any other way. And you said the same thing. Why? What unites us? Our sensitivities, our knowledge. I don't know you. To begin with, I honestly have no romantic feelings for you. But I am telling you, we are truly in this together, aren't we? In the constant search and in the eventual finding, you have lived through the exact same experience yourself. You desire neither more of the horn nor any more of that. Any so a perfect balance between all the components of this phenomenon. That's why you said, Maestro, it was perfect. Me? On my side, I say, if I'd known something wasn't working, I'd have changed it. So none of that, a bit more of this, a bit of that. Well, that's it. and you see that we're together without knowing it. Music, it works on me just as it works on you. There's no difference. If we look for the difference, and if we find it, it will be in the physical world. How many? It took 60 minutes and 30 seconds for Celibidache to finish, whereas for the other fellow, it was only 27. You can clearly see what they have reduced it down to. Antonio, you witnessed it. You heard that incredible grandeur at the very end of the symphony in this vast, empty hall. When it fills up, there are other elements. So you have to react to what you hear, not to your experience, which would again be attached to the past, like all experience. So, you have to react to the full hall. The horn isn't as deeply resonant as it was. What do? Do I conduct from memory at the horn? No, you have to see. It doesn't carry as well with the full hall. So fewer dissonances here, less background noise, so it can come out better. It is not emerging. The elements are neutralizing, thereby limiting the collateral richness. So how do I handle this? I adjust the tempo, allowing me to scale things back to ensure there are no gaps or empty spaces within this flow, which I truly believe is the central element of everything. Essentially, I am constantly reacting to what I hear in the moment. Whatever we just listened to a moment ago, it really holds no relevance for what I am planning to perform tonight. Absolutely none. But the function stays with me, you know. It simply has to be continuous. Nothing must be missing when the final columns present themselves. I have to have the impression that it's only like this and no other way. And if it ends like that, I'm free. I am also now completely free from the desire to be free. The supreme result is
Maestro Bruckner himself once remarked that his Fourth Symphony was his most intelligible work. Watching you conduct today, it struck me that Bruckner was, first and foremost, a master organist. The way you construct those massive towering sound columns so specifically evokes the very nature and atmosphere of his early musical studies.
It's the empirical work that helped him most because he was an organist. He was able to combine an experience for himself. Just endlessly how far these two opposing instruments could possibly go. 16 measures, or perhaps 24. That is simply far too long. So once again, he heard, he wrote, and he listened. That's really the case. And what you just said about the organ, his whole concept of instrumentation comes from the organ. It's a very good sign. The organ is a very anti-musical instrument, very difficult to structure because you can't change the sound. You change it physically, but there's the man. There's no contact, no vibrato, no man behind it. The humanization of the interval doesn't exist on the organ, just as it barely exists on the piano. There you can have much more personal contact through touch, through difference than with the organ. Gone, and electricity takes care of the rest, you see? You see? But the result, when why did he think for the orchestra? Why didn't he write organ symphonies? Because here, man has a much better chance of surpassing himself by showing all these characteristics, good and bad, which naturally create oppositions. But by choosing to reveal his true self, by stepping away from the purely physical role that music occupies. Because vibrations. But what vibrations? That's why there's no chance that electronics will ever manage to humanize a musical value. It will remain a truly very rich opportunity to let oneself be fertilized by these sound impressions. They can certainly have a profound effect on you. They can make you feel quite nervous. You might even mistreat your own dear friend, and they can make you feel so very dreamy. What do I know? Of course, but that is simply not music. It cannot possibly work on you in a musical way. Sound impressions have an effect, a resonance in us, but not of a musical nature. So all that's left is to define now what musical nature is. Well, that takes us very far.
In any case, Maestro, listening to you talk about music, I wonder why you generally appear as such a mysterious man, because we don't have many interviews with you, not many statements from you.
I really cannot say. I truly do not know. Within my own circle, among the people I interact with, there is a man who is simpler than I am, but it is not a matter of simplicity. In Saizia...
No, but this...
No. I am saying that if you have an impression of me, it is of a human nature. It is either attached to an old impression you had of me, or perhaps derived from a personal experience. However, I really do not want people talking about me. Yes, no. I want you to be fully aware of the phenomenon currently touching you. If so, I would like to explain why it affects you in this way. Furthermore, I don't want you stuck with that purely emotional impression, because that is not what music truly is. There are other much stronger impressions if it's only emotion that interests us. Emotion is the bait. We listen to the beautiful sound simply because it is beautiful in the first place. But the end, the true end, and the finality of any musical process is simply freedom.
I understood that earlier, listening to the perfection of the horn, which has a sound.
Yes, madam, and I'm telling you, if you see, you'll see people tonight shouting and applauding. They haven't understood. Because if you have truly understood that, you have only one thing to say. May God be blessed once again for giving us this. What an incredible, priceless opportunity to be able in just an hour and a half to go from the mass of impressions that terrify me, that way to see. I have no other ambition left in my life. I want to leave this concert right now. Oh, but no, it was truly beautiful. Oh, how very good it was. I am finally free once again.
I'll offer my thanks to Maestro.
It's no problem.